Welcome to Front Office Pros. Today, we're going to be talking about some buy low options in your Dynasty leagues that you should go ahead and start making some trade offers.
Hike!
Joe, who was your first buy low option for those out there listening?
Yeah, my first buy low option is going to be a guy you actually talked about on your sell episode, Steve, and that's going to be wide receiver Jamison Williams. I don't think you should necessarily sell this guy. I think you should possibly, go out and try to get him low. Whoever has him is probably going to be disappointed. Just this year he had 24 receptions for 354 yards and 2 touchdowns. Not great, but Ben Johnson's going to be back. Jared Goff's probably going to be back. The continuity with the Lions offense, and him going to be entering in his third year. I think there's potential for him to still break out and earn a larger spot in this offense. And I think he missing those 6 games through the suspension early in the season really hurt him. I think with getting the full training camp and getting to start right away could really help him. And just in the playoffs, you saw how they could evolve things and utilize him in the run game as well. So that's an intriguing option for me going forward.
Interesting. I mean, depending on how you look at it, he certainly could be a buy low. There's no question about it. I view him as a sell high because I don't think his value is going to get any better. And I thought he was the best rookie in the class. So, a few years ago. So I'm giving up on him. But I don't know why you feel so confident about this, because I don't think Jared Goff has shown that he's capable of supporting a receiver like him.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I mean, they used to air it out all the time, and when he was with the Rams, he was hitting on some of those.
Though, he had Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp. Those are not the type of receivers that Jamison Williams is.
No, it's not. But I just think the plays are there, and with their dynamic run game, him being able to stretch the field with some play action, I think there's room for him. And like I said, if they continue to utilize him on end arounds and then get him involved in the run game too, that could really boost his stock.
Well, that's interesting. I'll head over to my buy low option, and that's going to be quarterback Bryce Young. He was quarterback 23 last season. He threw 2,877 passing yards, 11 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, and he was a QB1 on the week twice, meaning he was a QB1, not the QB1. And when it comes to Bryce Young, I think there's a lot of people who are ready to give up on him, and I can understand that to a degree. But when you think about it, his numbers, I mean, I thought that he had more picks than he had touchdowns, or it might even been even. So for him to even edge that out, I think to me is sort of positive. But the more positive thing is, I'm a believer in Dave Canales. I think what we saw him do with Baker, what we saw him do with Geno Smith, he must have felt that he had confidence heading into this job and in the interview process to think that whatever he saw on tape, that he felt like he could turn Bryce Young around. Now, I fell in the same trap last time, thinking that Frank Reich and him were going to be a really good pairing. But, maybe Frank Reich was just kind of an old head, if you will, when it comes to the innovation of the game. Whereas, we've seen Canales do it now with Baker and Geno, whereas, what did Frank really show us? I mean, he had Carson Wentz and I want to say Nick Foles for a time when he went to the Colts. He had the likes of, Phillip Rivers, Matt Ryan. These offenses were okay, but they were never dynamic. I don't know. To me, I feel like I'm willing to take the risk on them because not every rookie succeeds right away. And if I take the gamble and I lose, so be it. But I don't think you have to give too much to go get him, because the owner who drafted him probably drafted him at a really high price. I think if you even offer a high second, I think somebody would be willing to trade him away.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, for all of the hype that was around Bryce Young, and for him to be as disappointing as he was this year, I do think that he's a potential buy low candidate. The intrigue with Canales is obviously there. I told you I didn't really like the whole Frank Reich situation in Carolina, and turned out that he really wasn't that special. But to your point, I think what Canales has done with the different quarterbacks and actually being able to take what they do best and forming a game plan around that. If he can do that for Bryce Young, obviously he has a plan and wanted to take the job because of Bryce Young, or else he wouldn't have the job.
with a 6-year contract, which could
Right.
be that, who knows, maybe some people just didn't, it was his bargaining power because nobody wanted to coach Carolina. I mean, it is kind of a mess. I think it's a good time to buy him now because when we get into the offseason, they could use that cap space to go ahead and sign some free agent receivers. They could go ahead and use their second round pick, which would be pick 33, for a wide receiver because this draft is super deep. So, there could be a lot more support coming his way. And I like to see that Canales was able to support retreads. I mean, Gino was a bust. Nobody thought he could ever do what he's doing. Even Russell Wilson, he was on staff and made, helped Russell Wilson be, I think, as a quarterback coach. He helped a lot in the passing game coordinator. And then you had what he was able to do at Baker, which everyone, and you and I, thought that Baker was done for. So it's impressive, and I'm willing to take the risk.
Yeah, definitely. I think, if they can address wide receiver, offensive line, those are the two of their big weaknesses on offense, or, free agency in the draft. Bryce, with the combination of the coaching change and some actual weapons in this offense, he should be a lot better.
So, Joe, who do you got for your second buy low option?
Yeah, my second buy low option is going to be quarterback Justin Herbert. And I know you questioned me if whether this guy was going to be a buy low candidate or not, but I think just the pure disappointment that he had this year, you yourself had very high hopes. I had high hopes he was going to take the next step. Thought Kellen Moore was going to be the guy to unlock that and really help this offense along. Also thought Quentin Johnson was going to be better as a, rookie wide receiver. He just didn't really pan out this year as a rookie. Think he can continue to grow. You had thought he was going to get 5,000 yards, threw for just over 3,000 with 20 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. Now he did battle injuries as well. That kind of goes to the disappointment. So if there's a Justin Herbert owner in your league, disappointment, disgruntled, I'd go out and try to get him. They now, got rid of the problem in Brandon Staley, head coach. They got Jim Harbaugh, the quarterback whisperer, in there. I think he'll formulate a plan on offense to get Justin Herbert back rolling, and it's going to probably lead to him throwing less, but I think he'll end up being more efficient in possibly those big plays through play action because Jim Harbaugh likes to run the ball first.
Yeah, I was just going to say, that's where I wonder if people will almost... Well, there's two sides of this coin. One side says Jim Harbaugh's the head coach, so just on the basis that he's the Chargers head coach, people might think that his stock is up because now he's got a legitimate coach that could, really help him. The other side is Jim Harbaugh has been used to running the ball. I mean, they won the national championship with Michigan because they ran the ball first. When he was in San Francisco, Frank Gore was such a huge part of that offense, even when he was at Stanford. So that's where it's like, I'll be fascinated to see who that running back is. I don't think it's Eckler.
No.
And if it's a rookie or a free agent, that's going to be very, very intriguing.
Yeah, it definitely will be. I mean, the one nice thing, too, is you heard today Jim Harbaugh says Keenan Allen's is a part of his plans. So it doesn't look like he's going to be leaving in free agency. So I do think Eckler's going to be as good as gone. So there'll be a new running back. We'll see who that is. But at least Keenan Allen's going to be the mainstay. But, your counterpoint to the coaching and Herbert being on the rise, part of your Bryce Young argument is he's on the rise because of Canales coming in there as well. So it's kind of apples to apples there.
Yeah, I mean, it's two sides of each coin, right? I mean, it depends on the owner and what their perspective is. They could view it one way or the other, and that's where you and I are suggesting, let's gauge it. Reach out to that owner, start having those conversations, and if they're unrealistic, then move on. But they could be anywhere across this board. So I think it makes sense. I am surprised, though, because you're not the biggest Herbert guy.
No, I'm not. But a lot of that has to do with, not so much for fantasy. I think he's a good thrower of the ball and, all that. I just don't think he's a winner. He hasn't really shown that he's a winner. We'll see if Jim Harbaugh can get that out of him. But I think he's, kind of like a Dak Prescott. He's nice for fantasy, but is he really going to lead your team to victories and playoff wins. I don't know if he's that type of guy.
I put way too much confidence in Kellen Moore, and ironically,
You weren't the only one.
Dak had his best year with Mike McCarthy,
Right.
and not so actually the opposite of what I thought was going to happen. So you just never know, man. The coaching aspect is such a tough thing to figure out.
Yeah, it is. I mean, a lot of Herbert's disappointment, I really think, was, not only his injuries, but of course, Mike Williams getting injured like he always does led to, just another weapon down. And then they were just throwing the ball a ton. I mean, he was throwing it 30, 40 times a game. That's going to be completely different with Jim Harbaugh now.
So my second buy low option, and I kind of went back and forth with you as to whether or not this is a buy low because this guy is definitely a hot name. But I'm going to go with running back Tyjae Spears of the Tennessee Titans. He was running back 34. He had 453 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, 52 receptions, and 1 receiving touchdown. He was an RB1 on the week 2 times. And when it comes to Spears, I liked his explosiveness. We got to see that more towards the end of the year. The value is there because Derrick Henry is not coming back to the Tennessee Titans, I don't believe. I think he's moving on. So as a result, Tyjae Spears then becomes that starter. Doesn't preclude them to getting another running back, though. And I do, we've talked about this off air. His ACL, or not having an ACL, I think it is, in his knee is very concerning. So, I mean, this guy, in some ways, I almost view him, I know this is kind of strange, I view him as a win now player because I think the second year contract is going to be it's probably not happening for him. So his best years are going to be probably this year and next year. I don't know about the 4th year. Maybe by then they replace him. So he's one of those options that maybe you could, if you're a competing team, I might consider going to get him and think of him almost as like a veteran with 2 years left. And if he has that opportunity, he could really, pay you a ton of benefits.
Yeah, definitely. I think he is more of a short-term dynasty play just because of that. And from what I've, been reading and stuff, it's not so much that he lacks the ACL. There's heavy arthritis in the knee because he doesn't have an ACL. And that over time, could cause issues. So who knows? There's a variance of opinions. Some people don't think it'll really affect them. Others say it does. But at the very least, if owners are concerned about that and, that going forward, now could be the time to buy him. If you're a win now team, you get him for a couple of years. If the knee problem doesn't arise, you got him for longer. The only concern I have about him is there's the potential of him being like a focal point of the offense and a 3-down back. I'm not so sure he can do that, but I do love his explosiveness, like you mentioned.
Well, depending on it, I don't know, maybe you know more than I do, but I don't know what, the new head coach Callahan compared to Zach Taylor, who was necessarily doing the play calling duties. But, we saw with Joe Mixon, it was really just him as the standalone back, but sometimes they didn't really allow Mixon. You would get frustrated all the time by having Mixon because he just wouldn't get a lot of workload. So don't know from a philosophy standpoint, where that stems from. Is it more Callahan or is it more Zach Taylor?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, we'll have to wait and see. But if he has the same beliefs as Taylor does, we'll see. But a lot of that stemmed from the opportunities of Mixon around the goal line too, because I knew they'd give it to him on first down. If he doesn't get in the end zone on first down, they're probably getting cued on second and third and passing it. So he almost had like one crack at it. Later in the season, once Burrow was gone, though, once they had Browning, they relied heavily on Joe Mixon, and that was nice. So maybe with Levis, and him still growing, maybe they will lean on that run game a little more in Tennessee to start.
So, Joe, who do you have as your final buy low option?
Final buy low option, I'm going to go with Javonte Williams. And
Bronco alert.
Yes, I know, but this isn't a homer call, Steve. This is, he's a young player, and I really think he had a disappointing season because of the ACL injury. It was more invasive than what Breece Hall went through. You even saw Breece Hall. It took to the second half of the year for him to look like Breece Hall. Javonte, we saw some flashes later. I think this second year removed from the ACL injury will turn out to be a really good year. And if you got a disappointed owner with Javonte, he didn't really look good. His explosiveness wasn't there. His ability to break tackles that we saw in his rookie year just hasn't been there. You saw that the Broncos offensive line had gotten better. Cushenberry, Quinn Miners, PFF is grading them as, two of the better interior offensive linemen in this league. So you have that, and guys like Dr. Jesse Morse on the panel when we went to the Fantasy Football Expo. They said the key is usually for these ACL injuries, year 2 is when you see the player get back to normal.
Yeah, the one thing that'll be interesting in this running back room is, do they possibly move away from Samaje Perine? He signed a 2-year contract. They could cut him to get savings. And if the rumors are true that Russell Wilson is on the way out, I don't think a team trades for him because of that contract, which would then mean that the Broncos would have to cut him. And if they do, it's going to be a massive cap hit. And they're already ranked, I think, 28th right now in salary cap, but they're in the negative 20-ish range. So they're going to need every amount of cap space they can get. So if Javonte is back to being healthy, you got Javonte and then Jaleel. I don't think Jaleel is going to go anywhere. I think it's going to be kind of a thunder lightning combo with Jaleel. Yeah, but I think it could just be a two running back system. I mean, we did see Sean Payton, for a long time, he had like a Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara at one point, or, back in the day, I want to say it was a Pierre Thomas and Reggie Bush, so like, I think he kind of likes that 2 running back system. 3, I don't think we have seen as much, but I think that more might have been because of the Javonte Williams injury.
Yeah, definitely. And I think to your point, I mean, obviously they took a chance on Jaleel and as an undrafted rookie. I didn't think, they necessarily thought he was going to come on so quickly as he did. And maybe thought that once Javonte was going to come back, he'd be kind of their little bit of thunder and lightning combined. And then you have the bruiser and Samaje Perine, but Jaleel just impressed them so much that Perine's role got significantly reduced. So I could see them moving on from him. And I think Perine probably was disappointed with how the season went as well, because one of the reasons he even went with Denver was Sean Payton said he was going to have a heavy role in this offense. Then it turned out basically he was our third down, got to have it, and Russell Wilson dumps it off to him in these, crazy plays, which definitely wasn't the type of role that he was promised prior to the season.
So my final option that is a buy low play for all of you out there who are listening is tight end Kyle Pitts. Tight end 13 last year, 90 targets, 53 receptions, 667 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He was a tight end 1 on the week 4 times. Interestingly enough, Joe, it's kind of crazy, but that was the most amount of touchdowns Kyle Pitts ever had, was 3 in a season.
Wow.
For a guy who is a dynasty darling, for many years, he really has been a massive disappointment. But I do believe that's because of the way that Arthur Smith utilized him. I think it really was detrimental to his growth. Now, I probably would have liked it a little bit better had there been an offensive mastermind come in at head coach, where now it's Raheem Morris. So I don't really, in Zach Robinson, so I just don't really know what that's going to turn into. But I almost feel like this could be an opportunity where he breaks free, and just based on pure potential, I'm willing to go at least let's at least entertain an offer of what that would look like. Because even if he doesn't, I don't see the Falcons. If let's say he has a bad year this year, right? I highly doubt they'll accept the 5th-year option for him. And if that's the case, then he'll be in his last year of his contract next year. And if he doesn't sign with the Falcons, he's a free agent. And if he goes to the right team, if he's traded to the right team, I think he could be used very, very well. I just think to date, he just hasn't been used well.
Yeah, that's fair. I think a lot, you mentioned Arthur Smith, and that's what everyone goes nuts about, but they honestly just haven't had good quarterback play either. His rookie year, he had Matt Ryan, was his last year in Atlanta, and he really utilized the tight end a lot and showed off the talent and what Kyle Pitts could be, and everybody's just been hankering to see that version of Kyle Pitts again. So maybe if they get, a combination of some new blood in the coaching staff coming in, and maybe we'll see if they actually go out and get a quarterback that could support him as well.
Well, I think that's to be determined. Because you've got, There's rumors out there, for Russell Wilson possibly, if he becomes available.
If that happens, I'm not sure. I like that for him because Russell Wilson does not like to throw over the middle of the field.
No,
And
I'm just saying, but he's an
yeah,
option. I mean,
well, I'm just
Justin
saying,
Fields.
if that happens for him, I don't like Kyle Pitts as much. Figure out how to get him on the outside, I guess.
I think Bears are going to take Caleb Williams, which means Justin Fields is available. I don't know if they would, but if the Falcons were to trade their first round pick, I believe it's number 8. I want to say I might be
Yeah.
wrong about that.
It's number 8 for back-to-back years.
But they could trade 8 to go get Fields. I don't know if they would do that, or maybe they take a rookie. I don't know, but it's not going to be Ritter. I'm pretty positive about that.
Yeah, I think though, to your point though, some of it definitely falls on Arthur Smith. You saw, I just don't think Kyle Pitts fit what he did. You saw Jonnu Smith, who had played with Arthur Smith before. He comes over and he looked like, better and was more involved than Kyle Pitts was, despite, Kyle Pitts being the uber athletic guy and, hear that he's not really a tight end. He's, a wide receiver. And just for whatever reason, I don't know if he couldn't grasp Arthur Smith's system or what have you, but just didn't turn out to be as good as even a guy like Jonnu Smith with Arthur Smith.
Or who knows, maybe Kirk Cousins. I mean, he's going to be the most fascinating name in free agency because I don't think the Vikings, rumor has it that they're not going to sign him. If they don't franchise him, which I don't think they would, that means he becomes on the open market. Where does he go? I mean, he can support a fantasy offense, but who knows how the 49ers do in the Super Bowl? There have been rumors all the time that Kirk Cousins was Kyle Shanahan's guy.
I think now that they made it to the Super Bowl, I think Brock Purdy is going to be their guy. Had they lost to the Lions, I think it would have been in the air. But I think win or lose, I think Purdy possibly will be their guy. He's still got him there. And the one luxury the 49ers have is they can spend money elsewhere. They're so cheap at quarterback right now because they got the last pick in the draft to playing quarterback.
True.
I don't even think he's making him like $1 million. So I just don't know if paying all that money for Kirk Cousins would make that much sense. But I think Minnesota should really figure out a way to hang on to him because their contingency plan at quarterback doesn't look too good. And they don't have a high spot to go and get one of these rookies either.
All I know is we've seen crazier things happen in the NFL.
Yeah,
so, and we'll know in a little over a month. We'll know what this all shakes out as. But that does it for our buy lows for Dynasty. Hopefully this is helpful. I encourage you to reach out to your league mates and start having those conversations. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time.